When you think you have heard it all, we are honored to look at one more perspective. We're going to cover tribal, federal outlook, national security, and other things from that side of the equation from Chief Commercial Officer Matt Babcock with Navajo Transitional Energy. So please help me welcome Matt to the stage.
Well, good morning, everyone, just about afternoon. Really excited to be here with you today. I know we're coming to the close of this great event, and have some slides, have some things I'd like to share. Much of it you will find is probably redundant to some of the things that we've heard from some of the other speakers, which I think is a good thing. It's a lot of the topics seems like we're all closely in sync, and it's just that I think we're all focusing on very similar things and have very similar concerns and excitement about various opportunities in the future, and excited to share some things about our views on that. Real quickly, just to give you some background, Navajo Transitional Energy Company. We're wholly owned by the Navajo Nation. They're our single shareholder. And when you think about what we do and who we are, I think it aligns a lot with what some of the themes of this event. We really do focus on watts, on chips, the resources that are required, the energy required to produce those watts, the resources required to produce chips, the resources required to produce the batteries for magnets and windmills, the resources and critical minerals required to produce the solar panels that are providing energy. So we really have a broad portfolio of operations and investments, and we're very proud to be one of the largest coal producers in the United States. So it's a big part of who and what we are as well. And to point that out, we do have Dave Schwend over here. Dave, you'd like to wave. He's the general manager of our Spring Creek mine here in Montana, the largest coal mine in Montana. They've been producing coal since 1980, have approximately 280 employees currently, and have produced almost 500 million tons of coal since that production began in 1980. We're very proud of Dave's leadership over the last decade, have achieved many great awards for safety as well as environmental. And one of the big milestones that they achieved last year was 7 years with no reportable injuries. So in 2024, that was a big milestone for them. All right. So I'm going to do something a little different today. What I've prepared really is kind of a slide montage of various sources, reports. Some of these are left-leaning, some of these are right-leaning, some of these are Democrat-leaning, some of these are Republican-leaning, some of them are in the middle, whatever you want to look at. They're a variety of sources, and what's really interesting is to find out how much we all agree on some of the critical issues that we're facing right now in energy and resources in our country. But if you were to ask people in the natural resources industry in the United States what the environment's like, I've got a few words up here that just, I think, summarize some of the feelings that we have as we try to get our job done every day. And I would like to say that we have great partners here in Montana. These are not words that describe our relationship or the experience we have in the state of Montana. In fact, it is quite the opposite. We're so grateful for the allies and the partners that we have, the Montana Chamber, the governor, the governor's office, and all the officials here in Montana, the business partners that we have. It is a fantastic place for us to have operations and do our business. And not only just having great partners and allies, but what we feel are friends here to help us be successful in our business. This next slide is a Heritage Foundation annual Index of Economic Freedom. One of the things that they do every year is evaluate a whole list of various items that they look at for the business environment. And I just want to point out here again that when you look at the blue line, this is the United States, and the top two lines are Switzerland and Singapore, which are considered two of the freest environments or economies or places to do business in the world. In 2006, the United States in this index was listed as the number 5 country, up there with Switzerland. Over the last so many years here, we have seen this continue to decline. And these are various things. This is the legal environment. This is monetary, fiscal policy, all kinds of things that in one way or the other have an impact on business decisions that we make and how we operate our businesses. So this trend is a little concerning. It's something that as we look at and we're operating our businesses, that we'd like to see that trend reversed at a federal level. Pivoting now to three topics, which we've covered all of these already: AI, watts, and chips. These are critical for national security, and you have a memorandum here from the White House just last October that says AI has emerged as an era-defining technology and has demonstrated significant and growing relevance to national security. It says the U.S. must lead the world in application of AI to appropriate national security functions. If the U.S. government does not act with responsible speed to make use of AI capabilities in service of the national security mission, it risks losing ground to strategic competitors. And then again, finally, in bold here, ceding the United States technological edge would greatly harm American national security. So AI isn't just a cool technology that we're all looking at and saying that it'll make our jobs easier or will make the video games that our kids play more fun. It's something that we're looking at a national security level, and really focusing on how we can make sure that we are in position to make this a strength for our country. Next, we got a couple slides here on what's required for artificial intelligence. We have very, very enormous amounts of energy. We've talked about that. It was great to hear some of the conversation earlier that maybe those energy demands won't be needed. Maybe there will be breakthroughs in the technologies. But as we're seeing the trend right now, it is a significant demand on energy, and will require us to have more resources in play as we move into the future. And just an infographic from Visual Capitalist that shows Microsoft just from 2020 to 23 increased their electricity consumption by 13 terawatt hours, and so the state of Montana consumes about 15 terawatt hours a year. So Microsoft increased their consumption by nearly, approximately the consumption of the total state of Montana. And then another chart here that just points out, and we saw some of these yesterday, that the growth in electricity demand is significant. We have one study here that shows that by 2030, expected to have 606 terawatt hours of electricity consumption coming just from data centers and AI, up from 147 terawatt hours in 2023. So again, we would be, if we were to make a comparison there, we'd be looking at adding nearly 2 Californias worth of electricity consumption just in the next, by 2030. So again, we have many utility customers and utility partners all throughout the country. Some of them believe in these results or these forecasts. Some don't. Some don't think that demand will come. But I think in some ways there's a self-fulfilling prophecy here, and I think that's been pointed out in some of the conversations, that if the generation isn't built, that certainly these data centers will not be located here in the United States, and they will not be located in Montana. But if the generation is built and those platforms are built for the energy to be available, certainly it should attract some of that future business. Next slide is just I'll skip through this quickly, but an EIA report that was evaluated that showed that, really from over the last decade, it's about 12 times more growth than what utilities are used to having to do. So it's a tall order for power generation to make these step changes in the magnitudes that we're looking at right now. So how do we feel about where we're at in power generation in the U.S.? The North American Electrical Reliability Corporation, NERC, again, one of those acronyms in power generation, just had their long-term reliability assessment was released in December. And it had quite a few concerns built into that assessment that we may not be in the position that we need to be to even sustain where our current demand is, let alone assimilate all this additional growth. So some of the concerns have to do with just making sure that we have the dispatchable resources in place, as well as getting any additional forms of renewables on as quickly as possible. And then looking at the microchip side, the Department of Defense also in October provided a little news article, and they said, summarizing, microchips enable virtually every military system from ships, planes, tanks, long-range munitions, radar, and communication gear to night vision satellite sensors, making them vital to the Energy Defense Department. So having microchips, which we don't really have a strong manufacturing base here in the United States, actually it's quite insignificant. Most of our chips are resourced, and semiconductors are resourced from important business partners and allies in Taiwan and South Korea. But there has been a growing focus on how do we do this at home? How do we have the manufacturing capability, but not just the manufacturing capability, as was spoken earlier today. How do we have those critical minerals, those resources, so that we can not only produce these chips and for ourselves, but also have all the various resources to provide those? And then again, just going back to this slide, are we, and you can answer this question, I mean, it's in your mind, are we in a position where we're ready at a federal level to really encourage the growth of energy, the growth of the natural resources that we need, and also are we in a period where we're going to see the encouragement of innovation? I'm very optimistic. I think we are. I think we're going to see changes. I think we're going to see a recalibration. I think we have to, and I think as we put our heads together, we have a very bright future. I want to now quickly talk about the energy transition. As I have a title here, the energy transition threats. I don't mean threats to the energy transition, although you could consider that. Can we continue to transition our grid in the direction of some of the new resources if we don't have the ability to manufacture solar panels, if we don't have the ability to manufacture batteries and have those resources, or the magnets that are necessary for wind generation? There are threats there, but I also think that the energy transition has become a threat that needs some recalibration, and we need to figure out how to make sure that our power generation in that sector becomes a strength for us. And just to point out that past energy transitions have really followed two critical elements. It's either been a significant price marker that's moved, it's been based on a cost benefit that has gone in a different fuels direction, or it's been based on some qualitative attributes. And the best way of illustrating that was to look at in 1911, when Warren Churchill was the head of the British Royal Navy, and he looked at having these big coal boilers, steam boilers on these ships. They weren't fast, they weren't agile, took up a lot of space, and he made the decision, a very unpopular decision, because Great Britain had so much coal, to transition that entire fleet to oil. And so it was a great decision. They were faster, they were more agile, there was all those qualitative attributes that required that. When I think about where our energy transition is right now, it feels less that we're focusing on specific qualitative attributes and price signals, and more in a situation where we're being forced in various directions. And I think that many of the utilities and even the regional areas would agree with that they want that autonomy to look at the resources that they have in the various regions, whether it's wind, solar, fossil fuels, and really have that freedom again and that liberty to construct the asset configuration that's best for their ratepayers, for their economy. And that's something we need to get back in the mix. It really has been a force. We're only looking one direction, one thing, and I think that's been a concern. And just real quickly on this slide, this is a comparison of 2008 and 2023. electricity generation, and just the progress that's been made. At the pace that we're at of about 1% of additional renewables, 1% of market share penetration of renewables per year, even if we don't see any demand growth, it's going to take we're going to be 2070 before we're able to even get 50% share with a renewable or non-carbon source excluding nuclear. So this is not the pace that we need to be on. It's not happening, even though we are seeing some progress in that area. So, and let's just bellyache for a few slides here. You've got the renewables. They can bellyache just as much as those of us in coal and in natural gas and in nuclear. They're finding it more and more difficult to get their projects across the finish line, state, local levels, federal level, more and more hurdles, bigger challenges are being faced, moratoriums, so it's a challenge there. We know there's threats on the natural gas side, despite the compelling economics that natural gas provides, whether it be in heating or even in electricity generation. There are many places where people are saying, not here, we don't want this fuel source to be used. And then, of course, near and dear to our hearts is that, in the coal business, we've seen nearly half of the coal fleet being retired when many of those assets still have a significant useful life. So it's kind of a bizarre, area that we're in. And this picture I have here is the Navajo Generating Station, which is a plant very important to the Navajo Nation that we actually made a push to try to acquire the asset, and we're unsuccessful, and it was very quickly demolished, and it's gone. There's hundreds of jobs and tens of $millions of economic impact to the Navajo Nation that just got wiped out. So it is a challenge. And then we look at on the EPA front, the suite of regulations that came out, that it's not just a coal target, it is a natural gas target, it is an energy target. And so becoming more and more difficult for us to figure out, and as power utilities, as energy producers, to figure out how do we make this work in the future. So a lot of competing goals here. To finish, just a few thoughts on some of the things that were already talked about, and I'm actually going to just dip through these real quickly because the critical minerals guys that were up here early did a great job of describing most of the things in this slide. And Matt talked about this, regardless of which direction we go, whether we go towards net zero and we build certain energy infrastructure in this direction, or we go in this direction, it requires substantial amounts of resources. And the comparison of the copper needed, this is just looking at the volume of copper needed to hit 2050 net zero. And as was pointed out, is about 700 million metric tons since humanity began, mining copper. We're going to need 2 times that to cover 2050 net zero. Next 25 years, that's a lot of copper that's going to need to be mined, a lot of resources. And again, just pointing out that all of these critical minerals are an important part of our chip manufacturing, an important part of the future of AI. They're not necessarily things that we have. We have certainly indigenous supply here in the United States, but they're not things that we're currently resourcing or mining. And these critical minerals needed for our renewable energy future as well. And then just the final point here on you look at relying on foreign adversarial sources, whether it's our microchips or other resources. A lot of that is coming from places in the world where we, being naive, I'd like to think that international trade will continue to work, that we'll all be able to work together and resource things from the lowest cost areas of the world. But that doesn't always work out, and when it doesn't, do we have a plan B? Do we have things in place? Because when it comes to our industry and our resources, we typically are asked to provide yesterday what's needed tomorrow. And if it takes 30 years to permit a mine and it's needed 5 years down the road, guys, we're a long ways behind. So just, I think final thoughts is that I really want to leave a lot of optimism. I think I was so excited. I cut my teeth in my professional career in the late 90s when there were worked for a small software startup. Everybody was innovating, doing crazy, stupid things. Less than 15-20% of them even succeeded. But it was just a time of energy. I think we're, and we've had great things happen over the last couple of decades as well, but I think we're going through another period of a significant leap that can occur in a lot of spaces. And so it's exciting that we will always be a part of that when it comes to energy, the resources necessary to build that future economy. And just being here in Montana and seeing those opportunities is a great place for the platform for the future. So with that, if there's any questions or no questions, I'm happy either way.
So the math's not adding up on these mandates, right? Do you push the mandates back? Can you get them adjusted? You talk about the public and our legislators understanding that aspect a little bit. And I think that's coming, right? What do you do then? Do you push mandates back? Or how do you get some common sense back into this transition?
Well, I think when you look at the history of our country, we've been a history of ebbs and flows of regulation and deregulation. And I think we've gone through a period where we've seen, not every sector, but we've seen certain sectors and areas that have maybe had more guidance than they've needed. And so I really would anticipate in the years ahead, and I think it'll be a bipartisan effort. I don't think this is just a Republican effort. I think that everybody will, when you look at big tech has a lot of skin in the game here. They can't grow their businesses. The economic growth in the United States is going to be stifled by the lack of energy resources and materials to build some of these future industries if they continue to grow the way they are. And look at NVIDIA. Somebody brought up NVIDIA yesterday. That's a 45. When you look at the last 12 months, they reported in October, it was $120 billion of revenue. The prior 12 months from October 2023 back was $45 billion. They added such a significant amount of value through just AI, and they don't even manufacture semiconductors or microchips. So I think big tech is really getting in the position where they're starting to realize that we have to find some compromises. We have to find a way to do this to where the economy can work and all of these competing goals can start to align. So very broad general. Yeah. Easy peasy, huh? Yeah. Yep.
Nuclear power, we continue to hear virtually nothing about nuclear power.
Yeah.
Europe uses a lot of nuclear power. Illinois gets like 60% of their power from nuclear power. We haven't built a new nuclear power plant, but Microsoft just bought 3 Mile Island. Where does that fit into your mix, and what do you see with regards to nuclear power, particularly small nuclear power plants that are a lot safer, don't require near as much water, and you can build half a dozen of them around an area and meet load demands up and down rather than the big behemoths that we used to build in the past. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, in our future, I don't know that we have any, let's just never say never, but I don't know that we're looking at the path down nuclear. But I certainly think that it's a solution that if it's done safely and managed, that it's one of the lowest cost base load generation, or the lowest cost base load generation that we have that's operating. So I think everything needs to be back on the table, and I think that's a great starting point. Some of the companies that have said, okay, well, we want carbon free, but we're going to look at nuclear again. I think we're just opening back up those conversations to get everything back on the table. So I think there's a place for nuclear. All good? All right. Thanks, everybody.